What is that green line? Well, that green line is just a measuring, and if I go up to view and turn off extras, it takes that away. Now, I will convert this one because I want to do a couple things with it in relation to both layers. We'll take it into Silver Efex Pro. Take number 5, preset. Actually, all the different presets here work very interestingly with this image. You can play with this many ways. Let's do this one. Well, maybe not. Maybe this one. Number 6. Look at 15. Yeah, I like 15 a lot. So take it back into Photoshop. You have a color image underneath the black and white, and merging the two often makes a very interesting image in itself. So I will use the black and white one on the top and the color one on the bottom. I'll put a mask on the black and white image. Come over on the toolbar and take the gradient tool. I have the mask selected, and down on the bottom of the toolbar, black in the foreground, white in the background. And I can come over, and since the layer is selected, when I do anything on the image, it is really doing it on the mask. So I'll turn off, in a sense, portion of the image. Ah, there's some color merge. Oh, I think I'd like a little bit more of that. Just bring it over. You see the mask? I'll show you the mask. Here's the mask. So it has a little bit of black. Well, geez, that's maybe not the way I want to do it. So the reason that it has that darker circle is up at the top in the options bar for the gradient tool. I have picked the second one, which is a highlight in the center. What I really want to use is the first one, which says dark to light. Now I'll come back to the image, and now when I bring it across, it will evenly bring that together. How nice is that? So you could actually play with this, with how you want to show the color image into a black and white. Oh, maybe I should take it the other way. So I'll come back to using it this way and having those leaves and things there. So it's just a neat way to merge a black and white and a color together by using the mask on it. Of course, I can also paint on that mask. If I paint with black, I'm turning off that layer. So I would take the paintbrush and paint with black in the foreground. And I can paint on the door, and only the door will show through, because what I'm doing is turning off the black and white layer and allowing you to look through that layer to the layer below, which is the color layer. So now I can merge these two images very artistically by playing with a mask and the gradient tool on the mask, or just painting on the mask. Very creative way to create an artistic image.
John, I have a
Yes.
question. When you were in the gradient tool, could you have also, did you have a choice of where maybe you could put the circle where the door was and gradually do that as opposed
Absolutely.
to painting?
Absolutely. Great. See, now you're already thinking, oh, I could use it instead of that. I could use.
Wondering what it would look like. Yeah.
Well, we'll try it, but you could also use some of these other gradients. Let me go back to that.
Thanks.
Great
Thank you.
idea. Great idea. So we have this. I have the mask, and I'll use the second one up there, and I'll take it from the door area and do it on a, how about that? So you could actually do this by stretching it in different ways and letting that come out. So that's one way. Another is to use the second from the left and sort of do that on an angle, or you could do anything you want. You see, you really have gotten the idea, and that is you have the ability to merge the two creatively by putting black on the mask. And you can use the gradient, and then you can use the brush and add other aspects, or you could use just the brush, do whatever you want to do to create a piece of art.
How do you do maybe a smart select of just a specific area so you don't have a gradient? I want to select, but I want to let it pick the shape like select subject does.
Well, you could do select subject. I'm not sure what we do in this area, or you could go to the selection tool.
Well, let it select the door itself.
Yes, so you can use the quick selection tool, bring it in sort of small, and just come up through the door, and it will select it automatically for you.
And then I want to colorize that.
Yes, so now you come over to the mask, click on the mask, and fill the mask, either paint it with black or go to edit, fill, and paint with black or fill with black, and it will turn off the black and white.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. You see, I've just created a monster for you. You will play with this stuff.
You taught this in the earlier class, but it was way over my head back then.
Yes,
Now
there you
I'm
go.
retaining it much better.
Now
Thank you.
I would take, this is interesting. That's a neat thing to look at. I would take the paintbrush now with black in the foreground and the mask selected. And instead of having the brush at 100% opacity up at the top, lower it so that it's not really painting black, sort of painting a gray, which means you're sort of merging that, and you can just sort of create other aspects to things. And just play. That, and the tools are the things to understand and understand how to use them. And maybe just do a little bit of the foreground here. But the merging of a black and white, not just by using an opacity on the black and white layer, but by actually making a selection, as you just suggested, filling that with black, painting with black, very creative way to use the black and white image.
John, this is Jim. Can you select by color if you just wanted to do the green leaves?
Yes, you could turn this off so that we are and select the background and use the magic wand and select all the greens. Then turn that layer back on. You need to clean off the mask first because well, I'll leave the door that way. And I want to fill with black. Turn off the dancing ants. There they are. Now you'd say, well, I want some of those other greens. So when you made the selection of the greens, you need to key in to be sure you got all the variations of the green. But once you have it, and you have the selection, so if I go back here, when I have these, realize, oh, I don't have all the greens, I can add more to it by just clicking on those additional green areas. Hold the shift key, or the shift key. Yes, the shift key. Just keep, I'm on the wrong period here. And just keep adding until I get all the various flavors of green. But there are other ways also. You can go to channels and pick up the colors, however you want to get there. But then when you have that stuff selected, you then fill it with black on a mask and it turns it off and it shows the layer below.
Thank you.
Before I go to putting a sky in and do anything, this image, very interesting to me. And it almost is black and white, other than those beautiful color eyes. But it may be very interesting in how that we could present this image as a black and white, but not the full contrast range of black and white. We may want to do this more of a high key. So if you'll all look at the different ways of presenting it, that's an interesting approach, right? That number 2, let's look at some others. Here's number 5, which is the full range black and white. I don't like this image in that full range, but I certainly like this one, that very high key look.
John, can I ask a question?
Yes.
If you were back to the color mode and in Photoshop, if you selected the eyes, 2 eyes, then select inverse and go to Silver Efex, would you still keep the color eyes and then have different black and white effects around it?
Well, I'm going there, but in a different way. So I don't know if that would work as much as I know for sure that since I'm bringing in this layer as the black and white, that I can then select the eyes. I use the quick selection tool, select the eyes, and I may even do the beak, but let's do one part at a time. Put a mask on that black and white layer.
Right.
I did the reverse. Put a mask on that. Make a selection. Make a selection. Fill that selection with black. Get rid of the dancing ants. Very interesting look. That's really neat. And oh, maybe I'd like this a little brighter. I can keep that layer selected and go to an adjustment, brightness and contrast, and I can adjust the black and white however I want that to be in relation to keeping some of the texture in there and keeping those eyes that way. And oh, maybe I'll add the mask. I mean, add the beak. So I could come down and do a selection on that. However I want to do it, I can even feather it a little bit and fill that with black. Oh, I filled the, I filled the thing.
Bye-bye.
That's why it's good to have history. So there I have that. I want to be sure I have the mask selected. Edit, fill, black. Still not doing that. Doing something wrong. Oh, I thought the beak was in color. I just turned off the color layer. The beak is in black. I didn't realize that. So I would not want that in there. Nothing of interest there. But you see what you can do with this image from the standpoint of taking it into black and white. And here's the open. And that's an interesting image by itself. And I could use levels or another adjustment to do some things to it. But I think having it as a black and white and then having the color added to it makes a very different looking image from it. Just very creative. See, the idea is play with these things. You learn the tools, which I hope I'm showing you how to use them, and not in a very sophisticated way. And they are so neat to do them. Here's a flower image. This is Darcy Pino's image that she shot at Gibbs Garden one time. Oh no, at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. I thought, wow, that's so beautiful as a color image. Well, let's take a look what it would look like. And we can take it in and do various versions of it. And then again, save them as different versions, come back a couple of days later and look at them, because you'll have a different view of how they look. That's an interesting sort of overall likeness. And again, you can adjust the contrast over on the right-hand side, do different things with it. I'm down to my number 5. That's a little too dark in the foreground. And if I come down to 15, I want to show you the aspect of this one related to how that looks and changes the intensity. See, here's number 15. Now, it has emphasized with highlights the lower part of those flowers versus number 5, which is highlighting the upper part of the flowers. So the bottom portion of this image is a little darker and the upper portion is lighter, very subtle aspects. Down to this one to show you the difference. Now I've just shifted the highlights. Now I can change those. I can bring it back into Photoshop and use the dodge and burn tools and change them some. In fact, this is very high key. So let me bring this one in. And I want to adjust this so that those flowers stand out very nicely. Take the burn tool and put it on shadows, which means it will darken only the darkest pixels and come over to the flowers. And I'm doing this at 14%, so not very high, but just enough that I'm creating a little bit more three-dimensionality to the flowers because I'm darkening just the darkest pixels and leaving the other pixels as they were. So I'll show you the difference here. See how those flowers now stand out and are much more three-dimensional. You just play with that, and I'm darkening only the darkest pixels when I burn on shadows. Burn on midtones means of course, I'm darkening the midtone pixels. And if I darken the little upper part of this to bring your eye down into the image and a little bit more down on the bottom part here, here's how the image was open. Of course, is a color. Black and white, and some minor adjustments.
Thanks.
You realize the diversity of the way you can present an image. Amazing. I want to get to this. I run out of time. I have so many more I want to show you, and I run out of time. Here's an image that I want to show you related to putting these two things together. The new feature in Photoshop of replace the sky is so good. Prior to that, in my volume 4, and I've revised volume 4 to use the new feature of replacing a sky, but prior to that, I had this panorama of the sky because I have a panorama of a scene. I want to put that in there. And the way I would then have to do that is to select all, edit, copy. So now that's held in a buffer. And come into this image and do a magic wand, select the sky, select all the various blues in the sky, try to get them down into the various areas here. And then I could do a edit, paste, special, paste into, and it puts the cloud in that selection area. And because it's on a separate layer, I can actually move it around in here.
Right.
Now, so easy to do in Photoshop now. Show that to you. Edit. Sky replacement. There it is. And I've actually added that panoramic sky in here. And the way you add clouds, additional clouds, because the package only comes with a certain number, is you press this little down button here and then import sky. See the little gear looking thing? If you do that, and then you can import additional skies, which is what I did. And so I have that panorama of sky in here. Here it is here. So now when I do the sky replacement and I have that in there, it just puts it in. And it puts it in in among the tree limbs, everywhere that it should put it, it puts it in automatically. And I can move it around. Bring my cursor over into the image and move it around. And at the bottom part here, you want to say new output to new layers, so that when you come back to your layers palette, you see the sky is on a separate layer and the adjustments are on a separate layer. So I could affect just the sky by clicking on it, go to adjustments. In this case, I'll do levels and move the middle slider because I want to move the midtones. So I should have moved that sky around a little bit more. I see I have an open space here, but create a little bit more drama in the sky for this image. Come down to the background layer, on the levels on that one, and open up the shadows a little bit. So now I have that adjusted. Now when I have all this the way I want it, two ways to move this into a black and white. One is you can click on this little grid work here, or you can go over to image, no, sorry, layer, and come down to flatten image, and it merges all of those layers together. Now I'll take this into Silver Efex Pro. The other way, which is a little more sophisticated, is to click on the background layer, hold the shift key, click on the top layer so it selects them all. And then you want to do what's called a stamp, which is Control Shift Alt. So you hold three buttons, Control Shift Alt, and press the letter key, and it puts it in there. I'll find out where it is up in the menu bar for you the next time, but it's just do that. And what it does is it combines all of those layers into a new layer, and it is the one you're seeing. You see, if I turn all those layers off, it doesn't matter because it's seeing the one from the top. Now I'll take that into Photoshop or Silver Efex Pro. Why would you do it that way, John? The reason is that you can keep all of these other layers here. For me, I probably wouldn't keep them. I would have just flattened the image and take it in because I always can come back and do it. Somebody have a question? No?
John,
Yes?
that Control Shift Alt, the letter is E, as in Ellen.
No, Shift, Control, Option, or Alt,
Alt E.
and then the letter E. So you're holding three keys and click the letter E.
I actually do them all at the same time.
John, I would suggest the first one. This is essentially is flattening it and making a separate layer. But I like the idea of keeping the other layers that you created, so you can. Yeah. I mean, you can go crazy playing with variations.
Yes, exactly. Yes, there are so many ways to do the same thing in Photoshop. Another way would be before I merged all these together, I could save this one with all its layers and call it number one. I could then flatten it, call it black and white, take it into the black and white. So various ways that you could do things. So I have this now all compressed into one layer. Now go up to Silver Efex Pro. And on this one, I think number 5 will look the best, but let's look at number 2. Oh, 2 sort of bright. 5 looks very good.
Yep.
Let's compare 5 to 15 to see how it shifts the tones a bit. Here's 15. You see it's lightened the foreground in the buildings, but on this image, I think the foreground should be darker so that it pushes you into the image to look at it. So I'll come back to 5. Now I'll bring it back into Photoshop, and I'll make some final adjustments with the dodge and burn. So take the burn tool on midtones and just darken the foreground, just even a little bit more, and the upper sky a little more, so that I'm bringing your eye down into the image, and I'm not creating pure black anywhere. Now I want to open up these buildings a little bit and do the dodge on midtones at about 12% and just open up some of those buildings.
John, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Since you use that number 5 and 15 so frequently, why don't you put them in your favorites folder in SE2?
Yeah, exactly. I could and should. Yes, indeed. You're right. You're right. You're right.
That would simplify things a bit.
Yeah, so it makes it easy. But part of it also is I tend then to not look at some of the other filters. And I like doing that because I may see something I like and I can adjust it differently when I bring it into. So it's just a way of not forcing myself only into one thing. Just lightening these buildings just a little bit more so you see the image. All right. Here we are at Silver Efex. We took it in, brought it here. Now watch the subtleties of the dodge and burn. See how much more you key in on the buildings, not the sky in the foreground. Very important aspects of black and white, where you control the viewer's eye. And it takes a while to get accustomed to seeing this. That's how that image then would be presented.
Can you show the black color one again, 1 minute?
Yep.
Wow. They're both good.
But this is, here's the black and white, but this is even a better version, see, because of the dodge and burn. Yeah.
John, I think it would even look better if you would darken the houses on the left-hand side a bit.
Ah, yes, good one. Oh, Jürgen, you're getting too good now. See, yeah, great. I agree.
You taught me.
On midtones to darken those because you want them to be more in the background and have the others stand out more. So here, let's watch the difference of this. From here, very subtle to there. Yeah, works. All right, we're gonna do one more and then we'll close for today because I think this is a very interesting image. I pulled this down from the website, and I've mentioned this before. Go to the number 1, the letter X.com, and some really beautiful images there to give you an idea of composition, presentation, black and white, all kinds of things. I thought this would be really an interesting image. How pretty this is as a color image. And yet at the same time, doing some very interesting things related to black and white could make this image stand out differently, but not doing it as the full range black and white as I had talked about with number 5, which I'll show you. But look at number 2, all that high key. And then of course, you could do those blue eyes. And I may do that, but just coming down through these various ways of looking at that looks very nice. Number 8, watch the difference of number 8 and number 7. Watch the eyes. See, they jump out even more here than if I come back up to this earlier one of number 2. They're there, but not the same level of effect as those are. Very subtle differences. How many variations here we could create? Don't like that at all. That's interesting. Here's one even more. Nope, don't like the color, the darker areas around the face because that very light in the overall. No, but the idea is I want you to play with this. I think that's very creative. It's like a drawing. It's a sketching. It's a sketch. So I think that's really neat. Here's this one. No, but let me come back to this one and take this into Adobe Camera Raw. Into Photoshop, and merge the two a little bit. Let me come to the opacity. Multiple ways to do this. Come to the opacity and lower the black and white and allow some of the color to come through. And if I put a mask on that, I can make a selection of the eyes, but I'll just paint them in for this time. Black in the foreground. Could make a selection of the eyes so that they show better. But I'll just paint them in. Look at that image. Wow, striking. Oh, well, maybe do the lips. You play, you create art. That's the idea. Create art. All right, all. Any questions before we go?
Are you going to show what you did on Jurgen's image?
Yeah.
Show what I do what?
The improvements that you made to Jurgen's competition or exhibit?
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you for reminding me.
No problem.
Yes. Yes, Jürgen sent me this piece of dirt, and I thought, no.
Oh, God.
In the
But
doghouse.
show the original.
Right.
Okay. Beautiful.
All right, so here's the image that Jürgen sent me. I'll minimize these. Here's, sorry about that, guys. Okay, you see the screen, right? Okay. Here's the image that he sent me. And there are a number of things that I look at in relation to the composition of the image, the structure, the foreground. For this image, there's not enough down there to support the weight of all the stuff that's above. So I wanted to increase that a little bit. And the light that's coming in is very pretty, but we're not bringing out some of the beauty that's in this part of the image. I'll show you what I did then. So you notice the foreground now has more there. I expanded the canvas, stretched the foreground a little bit to give a support. And see the tree here? Brought out more highlights on the tree. I'll do that for you in a minute. And down in the grassy area. So that here's, come back to this one. It's just well, let me show you the creating some additional space here. A couple years ago, I realized that I want to expand an image, but I don't want to just make it bigger overall. I want just a portion of the image bigger. So by expanding the canvas, which I just tried to do and didn't do it, yes, I did. I expand the canvas and I can get the rectangular marquee tool and select a portion of the image like so, and then edit. Let's see. Free transform. And you may have to hold the shift key. I've changed mine a little bit so I can just move this down. So I'm actually stretching the pixels of that area to create more at the bottom of the image. That gives a little bit of better support of the image. Then I thought, this is all very nice in here. How about if I use the sponge tool on saturate and open up with up in the option bar, also having the vibrance clicked on, says that when I paint, I'm also lightening, bringing it a little brighter so that I'm giving some nice color in these areas. And the tree, I want that to stand out even more. That's the essence of this image. Then a little bit more of the dodge on highlights to bring out what is happening there. And I'll feature that tree and the area around it even more so that your eye is led right up to it. So I'll do this. Now let's look at the difference of this from when it was opened in those subtleties. There. There. There's a little bit more. Bring out that highlight on the tree, down in the water area. So now let's look at it. Here.
Wow.
So when it hits the screen, I always talk about that. When it hits the screen, it has impact.
Yeah.
And the brightest area is where the eye goes, so that there is no doubt about what I want the viewer to see. And the last thing that we did, but this is the one he submitted, is with Luminar, you have the ability to actually put light rays in. And maybe you did submit this one, Jorgen, I don't remember.
Yes, I did for the race.
This one. So with the light rays in there, look at the difference of that. That was done in Luminar. So once I had it to the level that we have here, and if you all have I don't have Luminar up and running, it takes a long time. Next time I'll show you Luminar and I'll show it to you on this image, because then I put the rays in and I can put the rays wherever I want them. So I had them coming right down onto that tree. So this is the one he submitted.